Good morning. This is Regina Adams coming at you with another busted but blessed Big Mama love message. So I labeled this being mindful um, because I feel like a lot of times when people are coming to the church and they're zealous and they're anxious and they're excited, that we need to be mindful of the fact that just because we're new to a new church does not mean that we are new to church, nor does it mean that we are new to the things about God. Um, I remember in 1998, I accepted my calling to the ministry back then, and I called my pastor and I had to meet with my pastor and my pastor at the time. And in preparing to meet with my pastor at the time, my as I was getting ready, I heard the Lord say, "Wear pants." Okay. And I had this cute little pantsuit that my sister was working at a men's store, so I had me this cute little sharp um, pantsuit that one way it looked purple, another way it looked teal. So I thought it was cute, whatnot. I had my little shell on in my pants, buckle, everything. And so the meeting was for me to meet at the pastor's home. I'm like, oh, okay. It was no big deal for me because we had played basketball on the courts before. Um, we he didn't, but I talked a lot of. I was in my 20s. I talked shit when I was playing basketball back then, so I did what I did. So it didn't make a difference to me to meet at his home because there had been several occasions where we met at his home, whether it was a ministry meeting there, if he was having a barbecue, whatever he was hosting, he always had his home an open door policy. So me going there to discuss the ministry wasn't any big deal for me. And so when I got there, he opened the door, let me in, and then he went back to laying on the couch in his pajamas under a blanket. And I sat across from him in my pantsuit with my legs crossed and my arms crossed, like, why are you not even dressed and we're supposed to be here for this meeting about me and the ministry? Then there was another time that as I was in Oxnard, I read the Tri-Century Star. And there was a story in there of a lady who had accepted her call into the ministry, and she was invited to speak at a church. And the person who invited her raped her before she was supposed to preach the next whenever she was supposed to preach. And so it didn't I didn't put the two and two together, but my mindset was, after I heard that, I said, Lord, I am not coming to the pulpit without a husband, number one. And number two, I'm not coming to the pulpit unless you physically come get me, and then I'll be in your pulpit. But until then, I'm not doing it. And then after those two situations happened, later on came a time where the Lord told me to leave the church, and then called me, and the Lord told me to leave the church, and then he told me to give that first pastor a word to let him know that he was going to put him out the church. And when God gave me the vision and the anger that went along with it, my whole mindset was, oh, as long as you don't get upset with me like that, I'm going to obey you, because I had never felt God's anger before in that situation. I had never felt God's anger before, and so my intent was, I'm going to obey you because I do not want you upset with me like that. And I gave that pastor the word saying, God said he's going to put you out the church. And I gave him the vision and I told him exactly what happened. And then the end of it was okay, done. I did it. About a week later, I was on the phone talking to my brother and he was telling me everybody thinks you're crazy. I'm like, why? Because why would God tell you to tell the pastor that he's going to put him out the church? I said, I don't know. Maybe I am the only one that would say it, but not remembering the situation that I had been in before then. And then later finding out that there was another scenario at that church where one of the wives of a member of the church was dealing with severe depression because they had a death in the family. And because they had a death in the family, they called for someone to come pray with her. And it was a deacon that showed up, and the deacon that showed up raped her instead of praying for her. And that messed her up even more mentally, to the point where the husband came to the church and was ready to fight everybody. 11 o'clock service, stood up, said what the deacon did, pointed the deacon out, and was ready to go for him. But people held him back. When I accepted my call to the ministry, I had an older lady. I was in my late 20s, and I had an older lady. She was 51. Wonderful woman of God, and she would always impart different pieces of information to me that made me stop to think. One thing she said to me that made me stop to think was, when you're in church, remember, men are saved from the waist up. Not to dog out every faithful man, but for me to recognize that I'm always going to be watched. I need to be aware of my surroundings. It was a way for me to make sure that I protect myself, a way for me to make sure that my actions will not be misconstrued as something other than, hi, how are you? God bless you, and keep it moving. Because the way she broke it down to me was direction for my protection. And I carried that with me everywhere I went. And so even when I left that church and I went to visit another church, and I explained to them, God called me to preach, and that I had to meet with the pastor again. And then the letter I wrote had the pastor on a standoffish disposition, like the premises was, who are you to ask God to talk to you like that? And the pastor was so upset that I had said, I want to see God face to face. I wrote in my letter, I want to see God face to face. I want him to dim his glory so I can see him face to face. I want him to talk to me, to tell me where to go and what to do. And that was over 10 years ago. And the meeting was basically his point of view, that I had the audacity to ask God for something that he himself never asked him for. And the interesting part for me is I'm always slow to anger. I don't get upset quickly because the word says be slow to anger. So I take my time to assess the situation fully. And so that's why I didn't get upset. But my answer to him was, my question to him was, did you ask him? Did you ask him to talk to you like that? Did you ask him for that? He said, well, no, he talks to me different ways. But did you ask him to talk to you audibly? Well, no. Okay, so that's what I asked God for. If I ask God for something, why should I expect something other than him to speak to me in the way I ask him to? That's why I said last week, when it comes to being real with God, be real with God, because he's going to be real with you. Me not recognizing in my realness with God how that was even going to upset people that had position to either promote me or demote me or keep me where what have you. That's why when I had such a great leader, a great guidance from, when you're in your 20s and you're seeking God, and then people see you. And I've had older women that were in Oxnard that would say, "Oh, girl, you're doing good. Just da 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 da." And I've had women just continually to impart wisdom and impart their grace and impart their knowledge and impart the teachings, not only of the word, but of what they've learned being in church. I've had that growing up. So at this age, I'm not going backwards because I've had it ingrained in me for so long. And I was thinking about this morning that was the reason why I was at the City of Refuge for so long, because I remember visiting when I lived in Las Vegas, and my daughter and I went and walked into a church, and we were visiting. We just walked in. I was like, "Oh, this is a church. Let's go see what's going on." And I walked in, and immediately I felt like fresh meat. And I didn't stay, and I left. And it was like another church I was actually a member of at not West Angeles, in Las Vegas. And the preacher, I explained to him that the calling, and then recognizing that there was always something else going on. My philosophy was, if God called me to speak, why would I have to sleep with somebody to speak? Why would I have to devaluate the call on my life by having sex with somebody who never called me to preach to begin with? And that is a reason why I love being at West Angeles, because I haven't had to endure that, even as I've accepted my calling. The one thing that I've been doing is, I said I want to learn more about God. I want to be more in His presence. And I thought doing the missionary classes would help me do that. And then as I attended the first week of classes, my mind was like, "You did this before. You're not going to, this is not what you're looking for." So I withdrew from classes. And after I withdrew from classes, something dropped in my spirit, the Ethiopian Bible. So I just typed that in, and I started scrolling, and I was listening to something, and it had me still, because it resonated what was within my spirit already. And what was in my spirit was how I was fortunate enough, because I received the guidance and the direction from the women of the church that I attended before that loved me, that taught me about what I didn't know about, which was they were called watchers. God, when He created humanity, sent angels that were watchers, that were supposed to be watching over humanity. And the angels that were supposed to be watching over humanity had got the lust started to lust after the human women, sons of God, human daughters. And they invaded the daughters that had children that grew up to be what we consider as Greek mythology. But it makes sense that we have people that were anointed and appointed by God to be watchers, to be pastors, to be elders, to be preachers, to be teachers, that abused their powers, that abused their positions. And this is an opportunity that I'm teaching and mentoring to tell people, to say, just because you're in church, does it mean that you're not going to run into situations where you need to be mindful, Be aware of things that are happening around you, that even though you are not engaging, participating, um, instigating anything, that's the same thing that happened as to the reason why God made it a point to never have another flood in this world. My understanding now is that God created Noah and the ark to wipe out sin. And then my question was, if you wiped out sin from this earth through Noah and the ark, then how did it get back? And it got back because of spiritual wickedness in high places. The watchers that were actually angels from heaven watching over watching over women, lusting after women and still coming in. And then even after the flood, there was a whisper campaign where they are whispering things to create division, whispering things that are creating mindsets where people are wanting to conquer other people. People are wanting to rule the world. And the whispers didn't come from Satan. They came from angels that were sent to guard and watch over the humans. Now, if that's what God had to deal with in the heavenly places, what makes us think we won't have to deal with that in church? Watchers sent to watch over us, and then it becoming something that it's not. For me, I understand that even as I speak, I deal with spiritual wickedness in high places. I understand that when I bring a message, or when I pray, or when I do something that is so powerful on behalf of God, that it's going to ignite the hatred in the enemy that has been constantly attacking me, to inspire them to put pictures of me of the night I was betrayed, and to keep the whisper campaign going against me as if I'm doing something ungodly. And I chose the evangelist title, which I accepted the call to the ministry. Whatever God calls me to be, that's what I'm going to be. But that doesn't mean I don't know how to prophesy, because I can prophesy, because I've done it before. And I choose to try to keep that gift on silent, because I understand that when people know that you prophesy, they always want a word from God, but they fail to recognize that when you give them a word from God and they don't obey the word that they requested to receive, then they're held accountable for it. And then they don't understand that when you're held accountable for the word that God gives you, that things won't go right until you obey the first thing he tells you to do. Like when we were in prayer a couple of weeks ago, and the young lady came in and asked for prayer because of the dangerous situation, and my word to her was move. God already gave you permission. Move. You need to move. And I thank God that she made a plan, and her family moved. But the word came, you need to move. You can't expect God to continuously give you word of prophecies when you don't even do the first thing he tells you to do. And in my growth and in my maturity and in my understanding, that people, I may have a word from God, but they may not be in the right mindset to hear it. So therefore, I take my time and say, God, give me the wisdom to know when to speak and to know when to hold it. God has blessed me to be able to move in the fivefold ministries in all aspects of it. And it's not a thing to brag about, because it's a humbling experience to recognize that I can move in the power of God and acknowledge God as the power and as the source that I move in, because I understood that it was God's humility of the cross that defeated the pride of Satan. The pride of Satan that makes sense to me now was understanding that before God even created heaven and earth, before God even created earth, created angels from fire, used the elements to create things, and now he was using the earth to create humans that would eventually have the ability to elevate and judge angels. And the Whisper campaign started with just doubt that humans would have the right to judge angels. Who are we to have the right to judge angels? But God had the answer to that before the question was even asked. How many times have we been so distracted by the question that we didn't even seek the answer, not even recognizing that God already had the answer to the doubt, but because people allowed doubt to fester in their spirit, they turned away from God. And the reason why clay would be able to judge angels is because God became clay. God became human, went to the cross to defeat that answer. So now we are in his image because he came to flesh to justify his statement he made before the foundation of earth, that we would be in a position to judge angels, because he did it. And I'm so thankful for the fact that God has called us according to his purpose. That even as the statement went forward, even a few months ago when I said about the AIDS that is being spread throughout the world, and there is no cure at that time. There is no cure for AIDS yet. But if God allowed it to happen, that means he has a cure on the way. Why would we get caught up and distracted in a whisper campaign that is going to take you away from God when he already has the answer? And the answer and the cure is not coming in the same way you got AIDS to begin with. It has to come in a holistic, in an honorable, in a loyal and faithful way to God. Only someone and only a method that has been loyal and faithful to God can bring about a cure in such a way that somebody has to say, only God can do it. Only God can do it. And so as I'm looking at my life, recognizing that I'm dealing with a whisper campaign that I never even actually understood until now what it meant. And to now I understand what the watchers and who the watchers were, even as I look back over my life and understand how God was protecting me in my direction and giving me direction from those that love me to protect me from the watchers in my life. And how even as I look back and I'm thankful for the protection, thankful for the direction, thankful to be mindful of my behavior, of my actions, that even when they don't understand, I know for myself, and I know that God knows, which was the reason why I did stay at the City of Refuge for so long, was because I did not have to endure that part of it. I was able to sit and get the word and able to learn. And therefore, I wasn't doing anything other than being taught and learning about the Word of God in such a way that I hadn't learned before. And I thank God now that being at West Angeles, understanding that I'm able to move in the calling, I'm able to utilize the gifts that God has given me, because I'm in a place where I can move according to God's call on my life. And I'm not going to stop moving according to God's call on my life because of a whisper campaign. And this is my encouragement to young women, that if God had to deal with it among the angels, what he teaches us from them is for us to be mindful of the way we carry ourselves, the way we dress. We don't want to talk about that. God says, come as you are, so y'all come any kind of way. We have to be mindful. If God dealt with it and people were wearing robes back in the day, head cover, women covered from head to toe, and they still had to deal with the watchers from heaven invading their women. And now we are in more of a progressive society where women feel the need to be able to dress any kind of way and expect. We have to be mindful of ourselves. So if we are mindful, we stay in God's protective lane. And that's my message for this morning. Let us all be mindful of how we carry ourselves, because it's not just how we carry ourselves when the camera's on while you're watching me. It's how I carry myself when I'm at home by myself and I'm minding my business. There's so much peace in minding your own business, I can't even begin to discuss. There's so much peace in minding your own business. I am thankful for that. I'm going to end like this. Father God, I pray that you watch over us, guide us and protect us. Keep us in your keeping power. Keep us safe from all hurt, harm, and danger, seen and unseen. And we'll be sure to give you all the praise, glory, and honor that you so righteously deserve. In Jesus' name I pray. I'm going to say pray on because I love the way they say pray on. But also I want to say that I'm thankful for this ministry. I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to get up and minister to you guys. I'm thankful because I recognize that doing this has given me the opportunity to teach and bless more people in the position I'm at now, moving according to God's will that I'm at now than I ever have in times past. You don't go backwards, you keep moving forward. And when God opens up the door, you pray and then you move through the door. And I thank God that I am praying as I'm moving forward. I want to gain the mind of God so I can understand better what else to do. My encouragement to you guys is gain the mind of God, however you choose to, and He will direct your path. You guys have a great day.